going to make some more absorbers similar to these up here, but I'm going to make them perforated panels. They're going to have rock wool behind them. So they'll be the same shape as these, but they'll have hardboard faces that have drilled holes at a certain distance and a certain diameter. Because after looking at some impulse responses, the reverb time, getting a lot of buildup in the mids in the room, getting a lot of basically around 1K to 2K. You know, it's pretty broad mid buildup. You know, it's that boxy sort of sound. So I'm gonna try to see if I can improve that by filling this space up here, which has no absorption at all, and see if that helps. All right, so what I've gotten from the Home Depot is I bought these panels here, which are pre-cut 2x4, 2 foot by 4 foot Luan sheets, which will give me the right dimensions when I cut down these 8-foot pieces into 4 foot and 2 foot pieces. And so I've got enough to make 2 boxes, 2 foot by 4 foot boxes, with a front side and a back side. And so the back side will be solid, and then the front side will have the perforations, which are just going to be holes that are drilled at a particular spacing and a particular diameter to give me the frequency cut center that I'm looking at, using a calculator that I'll link to. It's an online calculator that will give you the fields to fill in for the diameter of your holes, the spacing of your holes, the thickness of your absorber, the space between the absorber and the front of the panel, the thickness of the front of the panel. And you just plug stuff in there until you get the shape that you want of the absorption. So we'll see. I did a calculation, so I kind of have an idea of what my holes are going to be like. But I might futz with it some more to see if I can get the holes as far apart. I don't want them too close is the thing. When I did the calculation I currently have, I don't have a lot of space between the holes, which is going to make the front a little bit weak, you know, which makes it a little more, you know, I don't want it to be too fragile, but we'll see if I can mess with that. So I've got pocket hole jig here. I've got my drill. Here's the Craig tool pocket hole jig. My drill will work with that. I'm gonna paint it with some wood primer, but then I'm gonna spray paint it this flat white when I'm done. I've got loops and screw hooks for hanging it on the ceiling. That sort of thing. Got my screws for the pocket holes. Got a pencil. So the first thing I think I'm going to do is just line up my boards with these flat pieces, so I don't even really have to measure. I'll just lay it down against it and draw the line with the pencil. Then I'll have my cuts marked out. I have to decide if my 2-foot boards are going to be on the inside or the outside, but basically these panels will decide that for me, because they are what they're going to be, and so I just have to conform to that. And then once I get the frame screwed together and glued together, I can lay one of the panels down on the top, glue it and screw it possibly, and then I can start marking the holes, and I'll do a grid of where the holes are going to be, and hopefully this goes smoothly. Originally I was going to buy 1/4-inch hardboard, because you can get a sheet for 15 bucks, but I didn't want to wait in line for the cuts because I couldn't fit it in my car without it being cut. And I remember they have these pre-cut panels, so I went and looked at them, and yeah, I paid probably $30 more, but it saved me waiting in line. And when they cut stuff at Home Depot, it's not always perfect, so you take your chances there. and I looked at these. They look pretty square and pretty, even with each other. So I don't think there's going to be too much problem with these. Okay, so this is something you don't want to screw up. If I'm putting the outside, the long piece, and on the corner, it's going to go all the way. The corner is going to go all the way to the end on the long side. That means my short side is not going to go all the way to the edge, right? So it has to be shorter by two. Has to be shorter by two of these widths here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to lay these long ones down, I think, and then I'll lay one over them, and then I'll draw where that is. So I'm just verifying that my inside piece fits in there, and I don't have, it's not too far off as far as my lengths go. All right, so the way this works, if you've never used one of these, is you have to set this to the thickness of your material that you're screwing into. And then you also have to adjust this so that the end here comes to the marking where is indicated the thickness of your material. This is a little set screw that can slide this up and down to change the length from here to there. And since I'm making holes in 3/4 inch wood, that's all set up fine. And I can go ahead, and I don't even really have to measure. I'm just gonna put 2 holes in the ends, holes in the short side on the inside so that they connect to the inside of the long side. I think that's how that angle works. So you won't see the holes, they'll be on the inside of the box. And I just need 2 on the end of each inside piece. And I'll glue it before I screw those in. Then I'll do that in the basement on the floor because it's nice and flat down there. Glue it and screw it, and then I might get my air compressor out and tack the top pieces down onto those and glue them as well. Before I tack down the top pieces, I'm going to mark the holes and drill the holes for each one. So that's just one pass of drilling. I don't have to drill it because it's going to be hundreds of holes, so I don't want to have to do that twice. So I'll do that before I tack them down to the frames. Then once that's done, I can prime them, and then I'm not going to spray paint until I get the insulation in, because the insulation is going to go right up against the holes, and I want to get a little paint on the insulation just to keep it from flaking off any bit. I don't want just bare insulation sitting on those holes, and just in case it's, it might have some dust. So I'm hoping that the paint sort of creates sort of a barrier, or any loose parts of the insulation will get stuck to the paint, because I don't want to be breathing in little bits of rock wool falling down on my head. So originally I was going to go with a just one slot, or actually one hole diameter design that would spread the holes all over the panel, but those were getting too close together, and I was afraid I was going to have too weak of a structure if I had holes that were only 1/4 inch apart. So I recalculated it for slots and slats. So what I think I'm going to do here is a design that has a 2.5 inch slot, 2.5 inch slat for about it's about half of it, I guess, a little bit more than half. And then it switches to a 1/2 inch slot with a 9 inch slat in between, and then down to a 1/4 inch slot with 9 inches in between, or 8 and 9/8. So that'll get me, the 8 9/8 is around 300 or so, And then this one, the 1/2 inch with 9 in between, is around 500. And then this one is around 1500. So I set it up where it kind of goes from low to high in case there's some sort of difference in the orientation that I put them in the room. I'm thinking I'll try them with the low side closer to the corner, and the high side more out in the middle of the room. But at least this allows me to turn them around if it improves the sound. I was gonna have them symmetrical with just the 2. I was gonna have the 300 in the middle and surrounded by the 1500 on either side, but I think this gives me more options to try out. I think I have a 2.5 inch hole saw that I can start these with, and then need a 1/2 inch hole saw for that. I have a spade bit that'll do that, and then the 1/4 inch is just a 1/4 inch drill that I'll start those with. I'm not quite sure how I'm gonna cut the slots, if I'm gonna just do it by hand with a handsaw. This Luan is not super strong, and I'm a little bit afraid that it's gonna give out if I'm too rough with it. So gotta work that out. All right, so I've got the fronts on, they're tacked and glued on. I went around the edge and sanded because there were some places where the edge of the top came out past this edge. I made these a little too big, these boxes. And these Luan panels weren't completely regular and square. So there's places where, for instance here, there's a little, you can see the box for about 1/8 of an inch before the top starts. And then there's places where they come flush. And then, so there's some variation there. But overall not too bad. I hand sanded a little bit in this interior of these cuts, just to get rid of any jagged stuff. And I went over the whole thing with my power sander. And so now I'm going to just do a quick thin coat of whatever it is, acrylic or latex paint on them, just to get the color started. And that way I won't need as much spray paint. I've got lots of white paint around. It'll dry pretty quickly, and then I'll be able to silicone the interior seams. I have to silicone the interior seam because I want the whole box on the inside to the back and front panels to be airtight. I want the only air coming in to be through the slots. A while back, wasn't sure what I was going to use it for, but I think I'm going to try it out on these. Let's see, 3 foot by 24 feet. So I'll have to do it this way. And let's see, I guess if I just have that 6 inches on each side, that'll barely come around the back of the insulation. But that might be enough. I just got to get it to the corner, and then I'm planning on hot gluing the corner. So what I did was I laid the burlap out, laid the roll out, had the roll on that end, put my insulation on top, and then rolled the rest of the burlap out over it with quite a bit extra, just so I knew I had enough to work with on each side. And then I cut across here. I cut across, so I have two pieces of burlap. Now what I'll do is I'll go through and slice it this way because I need only half that thickness, and then I can sort of wrap them there. And I've got my hot glue gun here to try to secure the burlap on the back side of each one. And then I just got to fit it into the frames, which are, the paint is drying in the basement. All right, so I got this one in. This is such a loose fabric. It's kind of hard to get it flat in the front, but did my best to get these corners tight. And then I cinched it up here and in the middle long ways with the glue. And you know, it's not exactly flat in a few places, but hopefully they'll even out. Hopefully that unevenness there will get straightened out as I go forward. But not looking too bad. Kind of like the burlap look, the color contrast there, but I think I'm still going to just spray it all white just to glue any of the fiberglass that's wanting to fall through the burlap. Just kind of glue it to the burlap, or glue it back anyway. So, you know, it's not super clean, but it's definitely gonna do. And you know, it's gonna be on the ceiling, so no one's gonna look at it too closely, I don't think. I almost forgot the silicone my seams, and I didn't. All the way around, and then I can put the insulation in, and then I can close up the back. So I got them up. Not super happy with the texture of the burlap or the Luan, to be honest. The Luan's kind of rough, kind of grainy. So I think I'm gonna sand them. I'm gonna bring them down. I'm gonna sand them. And you know, if I were doing this again, I would not have used the burlap. It's just too loose, too wavy. I think I could get some cloth back there if I fold it up and stretch it over it in the future. That will not be a problem once I can get to the fabric store. I just kind of wanted to get them done, so that's where I'm at now. But I'm gonna take them down. I am going to sand the Luan there. Maybe you can see the texture. The texture matches the ceiling as far as it being this knotty pine, but just doesn't look great here on the face. This texture is just too raised. Doesn't look great. Yeah, and the burlap is really annoying. I don't generally have the lights like this, you know, but that really highlights that burlap. So I'm gonna take these down. I'm gonna do some sanding and try to improve at least the wood for now, and then in the future I can redo the fabric. I can't open the back because it's nailed and glued. That would be a nightmare. More work to do. All right, I got them in here. I ended up reorganizing my absorbers. I have these 2 foot by 2 foot ones, 7.5 inches thick on either side, and those catch the first reflection from the speakers. And originally I had just the one on each side at the same level as the speaker. And that was working pretty well, but once I started moving stuff around, I was trying these that I finished here. I'll show you in a second how they ended up after sanding and painting some more. But I was trying those out on the ceiling, and I tried them out behind me in various places on the ceiling, and couldn't really find anywhere that made my listening position much better at all. And I did some of that testing, which I'm not an expert on at all, but it didn't seem to be helping the performance of the room really. So I started moving all these various ones around, tried them in the back of the room. I tried them the tall ones laying flat against the wall. But this was the only real improvement that I noticed when I put the second tier here. was originally in the where those new ones are stacked on top of each other, which made them the same height as the ones in the corners. But when I tried them out on top of these, that was the only real noticeable change to the whole setup. But it just seemed to really make the sound coming out of the speakers just that little bit more clear and more direct. And it almost like gave, this might be a psychological thing, but it's almost like it makes the sound taller. You know, it was like there was a roof on the sound, and then when I put those up there, it sort of opened up the height. And maybe that's just me getting used to the absorption of the whatever reflections were coming off of that space up there. So that helped. These, I'm not sure that they're doing a whole lot. Not a whole lot of what I changed back here did much difference. I did get a little bit what seemed like some change in the bass response when I moved them around some. And the room is so mid-rangy that I almost wanted to bring more bass in and not absorb as much. But I'm not sure there's a lot I can do about that. As far as trying to get the mids scooped out some, I don't think this arrangement, the new arrangement, changed that very much. As I focus on what I hear here, at least I made some improvements by moving this and those. Let's look at those. I'm not too dissatisfied with the texture I ended up getting after sanding them. This got pretty smooth. I don't think I would use the spray painting again because it took a few days for the smell to go away. I would just brush on, but I guess the spray paint did help with this because I wouldn't want to brush this because that might make it a little too reflective. You want the low frequencies to be able to get through. The highs, that's not really the point of these. I just have this one sitting in the windowsill, and then this one is sitting on the ground. And so this, the more open part, was designed to catch that mid. I think it's centered around 1500, and then, you know, as you go down to the slats, the thinner slats, those are more the bass area. So I figured it made sense to put them in the corner by the floor. They still have sort of a rustic look to the finish. I put quite a bit of silicone around the edges just to try to make sure it was all airtight down all these seams. I can do some more tests to see if I'm actually hearing it. But I don't think my measuring skills are enough to really tell if it's doing a whole lot. But, you know, maybe eventually if I do some more work on the room, I'll find a place for them on the ceiling over there, or on the walls. But I kind of like the look of them anyway. It gives sort of a spaceship look. And it was fun. It was fun experimenting, trying to see how I could improve the sound. And if nothing else, it helped me discover that getting these up here was really helpful. It's really nice to be able to hear as much of the direct sound coming out of my speakers as I can, and these things help quite a bit actually. The sides and the top, getting those first reflections absorbed down. The other idea I have is that maybe I'll cover them with, I could just cover the whole thing in fabric, and that way they'll look more like these. That could help them blend into the room a little bit more. If you want something like this, it's basically the same process. The only difference is that in the center, going this way, you can kind of see it there. Behind there, there's just a board going across. You can see it on both of them if you look closely. there's a board that goes this way that keeps the insulation from drooping down too much. But it's the same wood, and they're just covered in just cotton cloth. I think it might be gingham. I don't know. It's just a non-stained cotton cloth, so it's just the sort of off-white color. But I think you can get this in lots of different colors. These are just folded. The fabric's just folded on the corners there, and I think it's stapled up at the top. So you could go through the same process to get something like this. So I hope that was interesting. Maybe that'll inspire you to get some improvements going in your space. Let me know what you think. If you have any questions about this stuff, if there's anything that didn't make sense to you, let me know. I'll see you next time. Thanks for watching.